Hello, everyone. I'm Dane.
And I'm Kamraun. Welcome to the Malazan Brotherhood podcast. 100% of survey respondents agree that this podcast is excellent at inducing sleep. Sample size of 1 on the survey.
Yeah. So every once in a while, my wife will listen to the show. And she tells me the other day she was listening before bed. And she says, I don't know what it is about listening to you and Kamraun, but it puts me right to sleep. So if you've tried everything, melatonin, Advil PMs, exercise, liquor, whatever your pre-bedtime vice is, and none of that's helping with your insomnia or sleeping issues, give us a try. Apparently, we'll knock you right out.
Yeah. So funny.
So yeah, sample size of 1 is accurate, but maybe drop us a comment if we put you to sleep too.
Yeah.
Today, we will be discussing Book 2, Chapter 8 of House of Chains, a novel in the Malazan Book of the Fallen. This is part 2 of our coverage of this chapter.
This podcast series is intended to be a companion to reading or listening to the books set in the Malazan universe. It's not a book review, and it is most definitely not a replacement to reading the books.
We will be covering the events of the books in a linear fashion. There will be spoilers for those who have not read the books. We will try not to spoil anything prior to us covering that portion of the respective book.
Today's episode contains philosophical discourse, and thus may not be suitable for children.
Our show is listener supported. If you would like to support us, we would really appreciate that. You can do so by visiting our Patreon link on our website at horsefrogproductions.com. Currently, we are posting ad-free episodes on Patreon weekly.
Also, we'd really like to hear from you. Send any feedback or comments to contact@horsefrogproductions.com. All right, Chapter 8, Part 2. We pick up the chapter where we left off with Lostara Yil having just set her red blade accoutrement into a chest.
Yeah, you had.
In a short while, Pearl would arrive, and they would set out to find the cold, cold trail of Tavora's hapless sister, Felicin, along which they might find opportunity to drive a blade into the heart of the Talons. Yet were not the Talons of the Empire Dancer's own, his spies and killers, the deadly weapon of his will? Then what had turned them into traitors? Betrayal was a mystery, inexplicable to Lostara. She only knew that it delivered the deepest wounds of all, and she had long since vowed that she would never again suffer such wounds. Lostara's thoughts regarding the Talon turning on the Empire made me reflect on the nature of loyalty. Dancer formed the Talon, and it sounds like the members were loyal to him over all else. When Surly turned on Kellanved and Dancer, would that not be the first betrayal? In that way, the Talon remained loyal to the original founders of the Empire, and the Empire that they formed had been usurped by someone who betrayed them.
This is a question I have asked a couple of times because your sentiments is what I'm feeling as well. I don't understand how these various factions of loyalty, it's always like this one, no, we're the most loyal, or no, we're the ones who are loyal. It's a question I always have playing out in my head every time we get into the Talon versus the Claw and who's actually the loyal ones.
It's complicated. I get where your train of thought is because it's kind of a circle for me. So I see Lostara's perspective here as well because the Red Blades were formed after Lysine took the throne. Mm-hmm. It's almost like you're loyal to the person instead of the empire at large.
Yeah.
But then in the United States, are we loyal to the United States or are we loyal to the specific president, for example? And some people might be, but I mean, I think for the most part, we're loyal to the idea of the United States. That's where the thought process fails for me. You have loyalty to individuals, and it might be a leader that you believe in, but also sometimes there might be a larger loyalty. I think Fiddler, for example, might be one of those idealists that is truly loyal to the empire at large. Like he sees the value that it brings to the world. Take, for example, Genebacus and how the quality of life improved in the cities that the Malazans took over versus prior to that. Or Seven Cities is another example. All this internecine tribal warfare that they had prior to the Malazans coming in and enforcing some structure. Now, are the Malazans perfect? Absolutely not. There's going to be atrocities to get there and probably ongoing because these empires are run by people and people are a mess.
Right.
There's going to be the idealists and then there's going to be the people that do everything to take advantage of the system. What do you think about that?
I agree with what you're saying. I guess I think of it like nationalism, and that's what I agree. Like Fiddler feels like a nationalist. He is loyal to the Malazan Empire no matter who's leading it. It's nested deep inside of him or something like that. Mm-hmm. When you encounter these, like you said, Seven Cities, Genebacus, and all these places, a little bit of law and order is always going to improve things for the population at large. But as you said, nothing's ever going to be perfect. So, there's always going to be problems, but I think you're right. In the grand scheme of things, it does get improved for the vast population. To go to the very beginning of what you were talking about between the Talon and the Claw and who's loyal to who, that's something I still continue to struggle with, I guess.
That's a really prickly situation because I could see a cleanup happening with the Claw.
Mm-hmm.
The Talons, they probably had no chance of actually incorporating into the new empire. The Claw seem like the type of organization that's going to ensure that they're the ones that are on top. You can't have any of this loyalty to the old people sitting around here like a festering wound undermining our current system or something along those lines. It's really two different types of loyalty here. We don't know enough of any of the Talon to be able to speak on it, right?
That's true.
Bodden wasn't even a Talon. His dad was. So to link the two, I mean, it's a tenuous thread to say that he is representing the entire Talon organization. Because people are individuals. Who's exactly like their parents? In some cases, some people might fall right in line with the ideology of their parents, but a lot of times you have your own worldview because you might have grown up in a different situation than your parents, different time period.
Yeah.
Lostar collected her sword belt from the hook above the bed and drew the thick leather band about her hips, hooking it in place, then froze. The small room before her was filled with dancing shadows. And in their midst, a figure, a pale face of firm features, made handsome by smile lines at the corners of the eyes, and the eyes themselves, which, as he looked upon her, settled like depthless pools, into which she felt, in a sudden rush, she could plunge. Here, now, forever. The figure made a slight bow with his head, then spoke. Lostar Yil, you may doubt my words, but I remember you. She stepped back, her back pressing up against the wall, and shook her head and whispered, I do not know you. The figure said, True, but there were 3 of us that night, so very long ago in Erlitan. I was witness to your unexpected performance. Did you know Dalat, or rather, the man I would eventually learn was Dalat, would have taken you for his own? Not just the one night. You would have joined him as a bridge burner, and that would well have pleased him. Or so I believe. No way to test it, alas, since it all went, outwardly, so thoroughly awry. Lostara said, I remember. The man shrugged and said, Dalat, who had a different name for that mission, and was my partner's responsibility besides. Dalat let Bidithal go. I suppose it seemed a betrayal, yes? It certainly did to my partner. Certainly to this day, Shadowthrone, who was not Shadowthrone then, simply a particularly adept and ambitious practitioner of Rashan's sister warren, Mianis. To this day, I was saying, Shadowthrone stokes eternal fires of vengeance. But Dalat proved very capable of hiding, under our very noses. Like Kalam, just another unremarked soldier in the ranks of the bridge burners. That answers the question we had last week regarding how Bidithal got out of there alive. I'd like to know why Quick Ben let him survive. It's hard to believe that Quick Ben wouldn't know about the depraved nature of Bidithal's activities with children, and knowing what I know of Quick Ben, I wouldn't think he'd be okay with that.
It's very surprising to me, too, and I would have thought for sure that he was crafty enough to just escape, and not that he was deliberately released, let go, not pursued, whatever. I also find that very troubling, because, as we know, these characters who are depraved in nature, you want to see them mopped up.
Yeah, you can't have that stuff running around.
Exactly.
I guess that leaves 2 options. Quick Ben didn't know about his proclivities, or Quick Ben tactically chose that as an acceptable risk to letting him go for whatever reason, to undermine Kilonved or something. Hard to say.
These guys do have a way of thinking about the long game, and maybe there is something to him that if we leave him alone, he's going to do something, like you said, whether it's against Shadowthrone that's going to benefit me in the future or something else that we don't even know yet. There's also, like you said, the fact that maybe they just don't know. And there is that possibility. We see that time and time again as something that even the Ascendants and the gods did not foresee somebody doing.
I find that hard to believe because Quick Ben, at this point, he's got all those souls inside of him, meaning there's a lot of knowledge in there, and he's from this area of the world. He would know what they get up to in these temples.
Okay.
That being said, he came up in these temples.
Yeah.
So, it's an uncomfortable topic, but if that's normalized behavior, I don't know. Like, we haven't seen any indication that that's what he does. I'm just saying, like, all those people that made up what he became, we don't know any of them, really, what their backgrounds were.
Right. I guess we'll see if there's something in store.
I err on the side that he didn't know, I guess, because I can't see a character choosing to let him go in that case.
Yeah.
Lostara said, I do not know who you are. The man smiled and said, "Ah, yes, I am well ahead of myself." His gaze fell to the shadows spread long before him, though his back was to an unlit, closed door, and his smile broadened as if he was reconsidering those words. He continued, "I am Cotillion, Lostara Yil. Back then, I was Dancer, and yes, you can well guess the significance of that name, given what you were being trained to do. Of course, in 7 cities, certain truths of the cult had been lost, in particular the true nature of shadow dancing. It was never meant for performance, Lostara. It was, in fact, an art most martial, assassination."
My God. I never picked up on that before, Cotillion's name being Dancer.
It's a critical piece of information, and it paints the shadow dance in a new light, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And it's such a small sentence there that it was not performance, that it was actually for assassination. I did not log that away and, slip through the cracks, that one.
Yeah, it makes me want to see a true practitioner of the shadow dance go to work.
Yeah. Indeed.
Because I don't think we've seen that before.
No, I don't think so either.
Lostara said, "I am no follower of Shadow, Rashan, or your version." Cotillion replied, "That is not the loyalty I would call upon with you." She was silent, struggling to fit sense to her thoughts, to his words. Cotillion was Dancer. Shadow Throne, she thought, must have been Kellanved, the Emperor. She scowled and said, "My loyalty is to the Malazan Empire." "The Empire." Cotillion replied, "Very good, I am pleased." Lostara said, "And now you're going to try to convince me that the Empress Lysine should not be the Empire's true ruler." Cotillion said, "Not at all. She is welcome to it, but alas, she is in some trouble right now, isn't she? She could do with some help."
So this is one of those things that just continues to add to my confusion. Lostara says she's loyal to the Empire, not to whoever's there. He's going, very good. He's happy with that answer, which just continues to add layers to the confusion of what is actually desired. Cotillion doesn't seem to care that she's not loyal to him or to his version of Shadow or anything, but she's loyal to the Empire. Does that mean that he doesn't really care who's in charge either? And that as long as somebody's loyal to the Malazan Empire, that's good enough?
We're building up to some larger stakes with the Crippled God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Shadow Throne and Cotillion, they have their eye on the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they're particularly care to control the Empire anymore. When we were first introduced to them, it seemed like they were really out for revenge. But the scope of things has really progressed in this world. And now they're realizing we got to worry about this larger issue with the Crippled God, probably.
Okay.
He may have been dealt a blow at the end of Memories of Ice when they were able to deal with the Panyan Daemon. We'll see the ramifications of what happened after the book in relation to the Crippled God, I think, starting in the next chapter a little bit. So in that context, I think what Cotillion is saying here is we're going to all need to work together in some ways to deal with what's coming.
Okay. So more of a shift in priorities, I guess.
Yeah.
Instead of getting hung up on what's happened in the past and getting revenge, like you said, and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lostara hissed, "She supposedly assassinated you, you and Kellanved both." Then she thought, "She betrayed you." Cotillion simply shrugged again and said, "Everyone had their appointed tasks. Lostara, the game being played here is far larger than any mortal empire. But the empire in question, your empire, well, its success is crucial to what we seek. And were you to know the fullest extent of recent distant events, you would need no convincing that the Empress sits on a tottering throne right now." Lostara said, "Yet even you betrayed the Shadow Throne. Did you not just tell me?" Cotillion replied, "Sometimes I see further than my dear companion. Indeed, he remains obsessed with the desires to see Lysine suffer. I have other ideas, and while he may see them as party to his own, there is yet no pressing need to disabuse him of that notion. But I will not seek to deceive you into believing I am all-knowing. I admit to having made grave errors, indeed, to knowing the poison of suspicion. Quick Ben, Kalam, Whiskey Jack, where did their loyalty truly reside? Well, eventually I got my answer, but I am not yet decided whether it pleases me or troubles me. There is one danger that plagues ascendants in particular, and that is the tendency to wait too long, before acting, before stepping, if you will, from the shadows." I don't think he said it that way. He smiled again and went on. "I would make amends for past, at times fatal, hesitation. And so here I stand before you, Lostara, to ask for your help." Lostara's scowl deepened as she asked, "Why should I not tell Pearl all about this meeting?" Cotillion said, "No reason, but I'd rather you didn't. I am not yet ready for Pearl. For you, remaining silent will not constitute treason, for if you do as I ask, you two will walk step in step. You will face no conflict, no matter what may occur, or what you may discover in your travels. Lostara asked, "Where is this Delat?" Cotillian's brows rose, as if he was caught off guard momentarily by the question. Then he sighed and nodded, then said, "I have no hold over him these days, alas. Why? He is too powerful, too mysterious, too conniving, too hood-damn smart. Indeed, even Shadowthrone has turned his attentions elsewhere. I would love to arrange a reunion, but I am afraid I have not that power." He hesitated, then added, "Sometimes one must simply trust in fate, Lostara. The future can ever promise but one thing, and one thing only: surprises. But know this, we would all save the Malazan Empire in our own ways. Will you help me?" Lostara said, "If I did, would that make me a Talon?" Cotillian's smile broadened. He said, "But, my dear, the Talons no longer exist." Lostara said, "Oh, really, Cotillian? Would you ask my help, then play me for a fool?" The smile slowly faded. Cotillian replied, "But I am telling you, the Talons no longer exist. Surly annihilated them. Is there knowledge you possess that would suggest otherwise?" Lostara was silent a moment, then turned away. She said, "No, I simply assumed." Cotillian said, "Indeed. Will you help me then?" Facing the god once again, Lostara said, "Pearl is on his way." Cotillian said, "I am capable of brevity when need be." Lostara asked, "What is it you want me to do?"
This is really cool. Every time Cotillian shows up lately, he's dropping more great information, and he seems to have a really good sense of the game macro mechanics.
I am increasingly enjoying him every time he shows up. Mm-hmm. It's such an improvement over the bloodthirsty version of him we perceived in Guardians of the Moon when he was possessing Sari.
Yeah. This is something I remember just overall. He's another one that his arc seems to change. And like you said, the initial perception of him does change dramatically over the series.
It's cool to see an Ascendant have an arc like that, because a lot of times we think of humans as the ones having the arcs, and like the gods are just kind of what they are. Mm-hmm. You don't expect them to change. They are who they are. Right. They've been around forever. But I guess maybe it's because he's not one of these entities that's been around for 300,000 years.
Yeah.
He's still progressing into what he will eventually become, where he's probably seen it all or something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Also, Lostara is playing a game here. Her information about the Talons and Bodden, I think it's really important that she didn't let that slip to Cotillian. And I would wonder why Cotillian wouldn't know that if it weren't for him just saying that even he is not all-knowing.
Cotillian may be telling the truth here. The Talon were around a long time ago and may not be operating in any organizational capacity. Who knows if there are any actual Talons still around? I think it's also a stretch to assume that Bodden Younger is operating in concert with anyone else. He has no personal relationship with Cotillian as far as I can tell. And he, like I said earlier, he is his own person. There's no guarantee he's following exactly in the footsteps of his father, which is another reason why I'm so curious. What could Lysine have asked him or told him to make him so loyal to Felicin? I just don't understand that piece of it.
Mm-hmm. Especially if he's not part of the larger organization of Talon. And if he's doing this all on his own, you're right. It is a big, big question. Because he went through a hell of a lot with her.
Even then, I can't paint the picture as he's loyal to the Empire, because Tavora is asking him to protect her sister. What does that have to do with the Empire? Really, not a lot.
Right. It feels very personal. It doesn't benefit the larger scheme in any way regarding the Empire. It is purely personal. Look out for my sister. Interesting.
Half a bell later, there was a light rap upon the door and Pearl entered. He immediately halted and said, "I smell sorcery." Seated on the bed, Lostara shrugged and rose to collect her kit bag. Casually, she said, "There are sequences in the shadow dance that occasionally evoke Rashan." He stepped closer, his gaze searching, then said, "Rashan, yes, the shadow dance. You?" Lostara replied, "Once, long ago. I hold to no gods, Pearl, never have. But the dance, I've found, serves me in my fighting, keeps me flexible, and I need that the most when I am nervous or unhappy." She slung the bag over his shoulder and waited. Pearl's eyebrows rose. He asked, "Nervous or unhappy?" Lostara answered him with a sour look, then walked to the doorway and said, "You said you've stumbled on a lead." He joined her and said, "I have at that. But a word of warning first. Those sequences that evoke Rashan, it would be best for both of us if you avoided them in the future. That kind of activity risks drawing attention." Lostara said, "Very well. Now lead on." A lone guard slouched outside the estate's gate, beside a bound bundle of straw. Pale green eyes tracked Lostara and Pearl as they approached from across the street. The man's uniform and armor were dull with dust. A small human finger bone hung on a brass loop from one ear. His expression was sickly, and he drew a deep breath before saying, "You the advance? Go back and tell her we're not ready." Lostara blinked and glanced over at Pearl. Pearl was smiling. He asked, "Do we look like messengers, soldier?" The guard's eyes thinned as he said, "Didn't I see you dancing on a table down at Pugroot's bar?" Pearl's smile broadened. He said, "And have you a name, soldier?" The guard replied, "Maybe." Pearl asked, "Well, what is it?" Maybe said, "I just told you. Maybe. Do you need me to spell it or something?" Pearl asked, "Can you?" Maybe said, "No, I was just wondering if you was stupid, that's all. So if you're not the adjunct's advance, come to warn us about that surprise inspection, then what do you want?" Frowning, Pearl said, "A moment. How can an inspection be a surprise if there's advance warning?" Maybe said, "Hood's leathery feet. You are stupid after all. That's how it's done."
I am loving this. More of the great Marines don't give an F who they're talking to attitude. They have no idea who this is, but they're popping off anyway.
This interaction is pure gold. Can't even spell his own name, but wondering if others are stupid. That's so funny.
I love it. The humor that is in here with the Malazan Marines, it's top notch.
Again, are they smarter than they appear and they're just pretending to be dumb? Or are they truly dumb? Because you never know.
Mm-hmm.
We see some behaviors that do indicate some of these guys are idiots.
Yeah.
But then sometimes, if it's Picker, for example, she's smarter than she lets on.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll play dumb just to get more information out of people, I feel like.
It's the same as the Mott Irregular. There seems to be some more intelligence there, but they're playing like some country bumpkin all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it's not an act, but there's like some kind of collective intelligence that makes them smarter. I don't know.
There's also book smart versus street smart.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he doesn't know how to spell his own name, but when it comes to surviving in this world, there's a whole level of common sense type of knowledge that people that are stuck in books probably don't have sometimes,
right.
You know? Pearl glanced at Lostar and winked as he said, "A warning, then. Seems I'm offering those all day. Listen, maybe. The adjunct won't be warning you about her inspections, and don't expect your officers to do so either. She has her own rules, and you'd better get used to it." Maybe said, "You still ain't told me what you want." Pearl said, "I need to speak to a certain soldier of the 5th Squad of the 9th Company, and I understand he is stationed in the temporary barracks here." Maybe said, "Well, I'm in the 6th, not the 5th. Pearl said, "Yes. So?" Maybe replied, "Well, it's obvious then, isn't it? You don't want to speak to me at all. Go on in, you're wasting my time. And hurry up, I'm not feeling too well." The guard opened the gate and watched them stride inside, his eyes falling to Lestara's swaying hips for a long moment before he slammed the reinforced gate shut. Beside him, the bale of straw shimmered suddenly, then reformed as an overweight young man seated cross-legged on the cobbles. Maybe's head turned and he sighed. Then he said, "Don't do that again. Not near me, Balgrid. Magic makes me want to puke." Drawing a sleeve across his sweat-beaded brow, Balgrid replied, "I had no choice but to maintain the illusion. That bastard was a claw." Maybe said, "Really? I could have sworn I saw him wearing a woman's clothes and dancing at Pug." Balgrid cut in, "Will you shut up with that? Pity the poor bastard he's looking for in the 5th. Maybe suddenly grinned and said, "Hey, you just fooled a real live claw with that damned illusion. Nice work." Balgrid muttered, "You ain't the only one feeling sick." 30 paces took Lostar and Pearl across the compound to the stables. Pearl said, "That was amusing." Lostar asked, "And what was the point?" Pearl replied, "Oh, just to see them sweat." Lostar asked, "Them?" Pearl said, "The man in the bale, of course." "Well, here we are." As she reached to draw back one of the broad doors, Pearl closed a hand on her wrist and said, "In a moment. Now, there's actually more than one person within that we need to question. A couple of veterans. Leave them to me. There's also a lad. Was a guard at a mining camp. Work your charms on him while I'm talking to the other two."
That little bit before with the Marines, hilarious to me. The Marines think they're fooling Pearl. Pearl lets them think that the illusion's working. It's very funny to me, and it reminds me when I was a kid. I'm sure this is a pretty common thing for most young people, but I would get grounded or something like that, throw a blanket over my head, and then walk around the house thinking that I was invisible. And my mother would always let me walk around and pretend that she couldn't see me. She would go about her business until I would think, now I'm going to watch some TV. She doesn't see me. And I'd sit on the couch and sort of lift the blanket up so that I could see out from underneath it. And then she would say something. And I'd be like, "What? Like, you can see me?" I don't know. Good stuff.
Yeah, that's one of the joys of parenting. I think probably all of my kids have done this thing where they're pretending to hide under a blanket and you act scared like they're lost and you can't find them, or they're under your bed and you hear them snickering. They can barely contain their laughter. It's so fun, dude. Like the innocence of childhood and playing into being an idiot, you know, or like that they're magic. It's fun.
Yeah.
So on the topic of the Malazans here, though, it's interesting how Pearl handled that situation, yet potentially deadly for the Marines. If they think their capabilities are better than they are. They may overreach.
Oh, yeah.
I understand why Pearl wouldn't want to share that information with Balgrid, though, because it's information for him that equals power. In the future, when they overreach, they might be trying to spy on Pearl. And so he has no incentive to try and tell them, I can see you, idiot.
Yeah, that's a good point.
We'll see if they overreach or not in the future, I guess.
Yeah.
Lostara stared at Pearl. Deadpan, she said, "My charms." Pearl grinned and said, "Aye. And if you leave him smitten, well, consider it a future investment in case we need the lad later." Lostara said, "I see." I like this from her, where she's not at all interested in manipulation using her looks.
Mm-hmm.
That's a interesting quirk of her personality, I think.
Yeah.
It's one of the reasons I like her.
She's a good character. Yeah. Many reasons like that.
Lostara opened the door, stepping back to let Pearl precede her. The air within the stables was foul. Urine, sweat, honing oil, and wet straw. Soldiers were everywhere, lying or sitting on beds or on items from a collection of ornate furniture that had come from the main house. There was little in the way of conversation, and even that fell away as heads turned towards the two strangers.
Jesus. Just all these smells and everything, it's unfortunately reminding me of the locker rooms at work.
Sounds about right. I mean, you pack up a bunch of men together in a locker room / bathroom, it's inevitably going to smell like this.
Redolent.
You know?
It's, summertime is a whole new joy.
Yeah. Pearl drawled, "Thank you for your attention. I will speak with Sergeant Gessler and Corporal Stormy." A solid-looking, bronze-skinned man was sprawled on a plush couch. He said, "I'm Gessler. The one snoring under those silks is Stormy. And if you come from Oblat, tell him we'll pay up. Eventually." Smiling, Pearl gestured at Lostara to follow and strode up to the sergeant. He said, "I am not here to call in your debts. Rather, I would like to speak with you in private, concerning your recent adventures." Gessler said, "Is that right? And who in Feiner's hoofprint are you?" Pearl's gaze fell to Stormy. He said, "This is an imperial matter. Will you wake him or shall I? Further, my companion wishes to speak with a soldier named Pella." Gessler's grin was cool. He said, "You want to wake my corporal? Go right ahead. As for Pella, he's not here at the moment." Pearl sighed and stepped to the side of the bed. A moment's study of the heap of expensive silks bearing the snoring corporal. Then the claw reached down and flung the coverings clear. The hand that snapped to Pearl's right shin, halfway between knee and ankle, was large enough to almost close entirely around the limb. The surge that followed left Lostara gaping. Up, Pearl yelling. Up as Stormy reared from the bed like a bear prodded from its hibernation, a roar rolling from his lungs. Had the chamber contained a ceiling of normal height, rather than a simple few crossbeams spanning the space beneath the stable roof, none of which were, mercifully, directly overhead, Pearl would have struck it, and hard, as he was lifted into the air by that single hand clasped around his shin. Lifted, then thrown.
This is hilarious, because I'm sure Gessler knew exactly what would happen, but didn't say anything.
Of course! The way these guys handle people they don't know is funny. It's no wonder they keep getting demoted.
Yeah. Yeah. No respect for anybody.
Pearl cavorted, arms flailing, his knees shooting up over his head, spinning, legs kicking free as Stormy's hand let go. He came down hard on one shoulder, the breath leaving his lungs in a grunting whoosh. He lay unmoving, drawing his legs up, in increments, into a curled position. That's really undignified, poor guy. Stormy was standing now, shaggy-haired, his red beard in wild disarray, the oblivion of sleep vanishing from his eyes like pine needles in a fire that was quickly flaring into a rage. Stormy bellowed, "I said no one wakes me!" Huge hands held out to either side and clutching at the air, as if eager to close on offending throats, his bright blue eyes fixed suddenly on Pearl, who was only now moving onto his hands and knees, his head hanging low. Taking a step closer, Stormy asked, "Is this the bastard?" Lostara blocked his path. Grunting, Stormy halted. From the couch, Gessler said, "Leave them be, Corporal. That fop you just tossed is a claw. And a sharper look at that woman in front of you will tell you she's a Redblade, or was, and can likely defend herself just fine. No need to get into a brawl over lost sleep."
Another example of how good these veterans are at picking up on subtle clues. I think that's really cool.
I wonder how he identified Lostara as a Redblade here.
I wonder the same thing. If she put her accoutrement into a chest and got rid of them, is there something like a tell? I wonder what that tell is.
Maybe because she's a Seven Cities native, she's not in the army, but she's walking around in a official Malazan capacity. Maybe that's the logical next leap on the conclusions mat.
Okay. Well, the other question I have is, how does everybody know that Pearl is a claw? Do you think he's wearing something, like his armor or something, just as a clear indicator? Or just the way that he behaves?
It's the way he carries himself, man. He comes in confident. He acts like he has all the authority in the world. It's gotta be. Like the way he's dressed. It's all those things commingled together, I think. It's leading to this.
Because I sometimes wonder, wouldn't you want, if you were a claw, and your whole thing is subterfuge and assassination and whatnot, wouldn't you want to not be recognized as a claw immediately? But maybe he's so pompous and arrogant that he thinks he's good enough. He doesn't care if you know, like, I'll show you my hand and I'll still win. That kind of attitude.
When he's dealing with the Malazans specifically, and he's saying he's here in an official capacity for the Malazans, then I think it's a different scenario than when he's actually out working, because then he's like Salkiland, for example. He pretended to be, a merchant or whatever it was.
Yeah, okay.
And then in that case, he kind of fits in as an eccentric merchant, the way he's dressed.
Okay, yeah, that makes more sense.
Pearl was climbing to his feet, massaging his shoulder, his breath deep and shuddering. Hand on the pommel of her sword, Lostara stared steadily into Stormy's eyes. In a conversational tone, she said, "We were wondering which of you is the better storyteller. My companion here would like to hear a tale. Of course, there will be payment for the privilege. Perhaps your debts to this oblat can be taken care of, as a show of our appreciation." Stormy scowled and glanced back at Gessler. The sergeant slowly rose from the couch and said, "Well, lass, the corporal here is better with the scary ones, since he tells them so bad they ain't so scary anymore. Since you're being so kind with, our recent push of the Lord at Knuckles, me and the corporal will both weave you a tale, if that's what you're here for. We ain't shy, after all. Where should we start? I was born," Lostara cut in, "not that early. I will leave the rest to Pearl, though perhaps someone could get him something to drink to assist in his recovery. He can advise you on where to start. In the meantime, where is Pella?" Gessler said, "He's out back." Lostara said, "Thank you." As she was making her way to the narrow, low door at the back of the stables, another sergeant emerged to move alongside her. The man said, "I'll escort you." Lostara thought, another Dan Filari veteran. What's with the finger bones? What's with the finger bones indeed? Looks like they found what they were looking for in that graveyard.
Yeah, they did. Picked it clean, maybe.
Yeah.
So the way I read it is, as she was making her way to the back of the stables, another sergeant emerged. To me, that sounds like that's Truth, is the other sergeant.
He's not a sergeant. Truth comes in later when he brings more bags of bones.
So I thought as it goes down in, it sounded like, if you go down a little bit further, the sergeant touched her arm as she made to approach Pella.
Yeah, it's Fiddler. So Fiddler is the other Filari sergeant.
This is Fiddler this whole time that's walking with her?
Yes. There's two Filaris in this scenario. So Stormy's the first one.
Mm-hmm.
Then a sergeant gets up and she notes it's another Filari. The only other person that would be is Fiddler.
So
and it's a sergeant. Fiddler's a sergeant. Immediately, this sergeant is Fiddler now.
And Gessler's not Filari, or Gessler's a corporal? What is...
Gessler is Conese.
Oh, he's Conese. Okay. All right. I was confused then. I didn't realize that was Fiddler. I know he's Filari, but I didn't realize that it was him, and he's just not mentioned by name, I guess.
I was thinking about this. Pella and Truth have to be, privates? Because Stormy's corporal, and then Gessler is sergeant within that squad.
Okay.
Yeah, Truth and Pella, they're not going to be sergeants. They're like lower ranks.
Okay. I thought that it would have been Truth, but okay.
Truth comes in later, bringing bags of bones. Pella's sitting in the back right here.
I was confused then, yeah, because I thought it was Truth who walked in, introduced to Pella, then left. But you're right, he's not a sergeant. He can't be a sergeant, so, okay.
Let's see how I edit this.
That's all right. You can make me out to be the country bumpkin.
You know, you glaze over all of this stuff I smooth out, don't even include it. You know, it's just completely, it went away, you know? But somehow I'm the villain.
What have you done for me lately?
I censored you to protect you.
Kamraun, have I told you lately that I appreciate you?
Thank you. I appreciate that, you know? I do my best to make you look the best you possibly can.
I mean, it's not easy. It is not easy. Good work.
As she swung the door open, Lostara asked, "Am I likely to get lost, Sergeant?" 6 paces beyond was the estate's back wall. Heaps of sun-dried horse manure were banked against it. Seated on one of them was a young soldier. At the foot of a nearby pile lay 2 dogs, both asleep. One huge and terribly scarred, the other tiny, a snarl of hair and a pug nose. The Hengese roach dog and the Wiccan cattle dog,
Yeah.
Roach and Bent respectively. It's good to see that they survived. And a quick reminder, they were saved at the end of Deadhouse Gates. Mappo gave them his last 2 healing potions.
That was an incredible gesture.
It was. And I think he saw how Truth was so worried about these dogs. Truth is a sensitive type.
Yeah.
He was just feeling really generous and wanted to help him out.
Mm-hmm.
That was nice of him.
Well, it looks like the soldiers have, I guess, probably specifically Truth then, still taking care of these dogs, making sure they're not just left out in the gutter or anything.
Yeah. The sergeant touched her arm as she made to approach Pella. She faced him with an inquiring look. Then the man replied, "Possibly. Are you with one of the other legions?" This was in response to her asking if she'd get lost. Lostara said no. He glanced back at the stables as he said, "Ah, newly assigned to Handmaid the Claw." Lostara asked, "Handmaid?" The sergeant said, "Aye. The man needs learning. Seems he chose well in you, at least." Lostara asked, "What is it you want, Sergeant?" The sergeant said, "Never mind. I'll leave you now." She watched him re-enter the stables. Then, with a shrug, she swung about and walked up to Pella. Neither dog awoke at her approach. 2 large burlap sacks framed the soldier, the one on the soldier's right filled near to bursting, the other perhaps a third full. The lad himself was hunched over, holding a small copper awl, which he was using to drill a hole in a finger bone. The sacks, Lostara realized, contained hundreds of such bones. Lostara said, "Pella." The young man looked up, blinked, and asked, "Do I know you?" Lostara said, "No, but we perhaps share an acquaintance." Pella resumed his work and replied, "Oh." Lostara said, "You are a guard in the mines." Without looking up, Pella replied, "Not quite. I was garrisoned at one of the settlements, Skull Cup. But then the rebellion started. 15 of us survived the first night. No officers. We stayed off the road and eventually made our way to Dosin Pali. Took 4 nights, and we could see the city burning for the first 3. Wasn't much left when we arrived. A Malazan trader ship showed up about the same time as us and took us, eventually, here to Erin." Lostara said, "Skull Cup. There was a prisoner there, a young girl." Pella cut in. "Tavora's sister, you mean? Felicin." Lostara's breath caught. Pella looked up and said, "I was wondering when somebody would find me about that. Am I under arrest then?" Lostara said, "No. Why? Do you think you should be?" Pella returned to his work. He said, "Probably. I helped them escape after all. The night of the uprising. Don't know if they ever made it, though. I left them supplies, such as I could find. They were planning on heading north then west, across the desert. I'm pretty sure I wasn't the only one aiding them, but I never found out who the others were."
Can you remind me who else was helping? I forget. Was it just Duiker?
Culp was sent by Duiker to pick them up. I don't think anyone else aside from Pella was cited as actively aiding their escape.
Okay.
Lostara slowly crouched down until she was at his eye level. She said, "Not just Felicin, then. Who was with her?" Pella replied, "Bodden, a damned frightening man, that one, but strangely loyal to Felicin, though." He lifted his head and met her gaze, then continued, "Well, she wasn't one to reward loyalty, if you know what I mean. Anyway, Bodden and Heberick." Lostara asked, "Heberick? Who was that?" Pella replied, "Was a once priest of Fainur, all tattooed with the fur of the boar. Had no hands, they'd been cut off. Anyway, them 3. Lostara murmured, "Across the desert. But the west coast of the island has nothing." Pella said, "Well, they were expecting a boat then, weren't they? It was planned, right? Anyway, that's as far as I can take the tale. For the rest, ask my sergeant. Or Stormy, or Truth." Lostara asked, "Truth? Who is he?" Pella said, "He's the one who just showed up in the doorway behind you, come to deliver more bones." He raised his voice and said, "No need to hesitate, Truth. In fact, this pretty woman here has some questions for you." Lostara thought, "Another one with a strange skin. Hood take me, a comely lad, though that air of vulnerability would get on my nerves eventually." She studied the tall, gangly youth who cautiously approached, carrying another bulging burlap sack from which sand drifted down in a dusty cloud. She straightened, slipping some iron into her tone. Lostara said, "I would know Felicin." Sufficient to catch Pella's notice, and he threw her a sharp look. Both dogs had awakened at Truth's arrival, but neither rose from where they lay. They simply fixed eyes on the lad. Truth set down the bag and snapped to sudden attentiveness. Color rose in his face. Lostara thought, "My charms. It's not Pella who will remember this day, not Pella who will find someone to worship." She said, "Tell me about what happened on the western shore of Otatarl Island. Did the rendezvous occur as planned?" After a moment, Truth replied, "I believe so, but we weren't part of that plan. We just happened to find ourselves in the same boat with Culp, and it was Culp who was looking to collect them." Lostara asked, "Culp? The cadre mage from the 7th? Truth said, "Aye, him. He'd been sent by Duiker." Lostara thought, "Gods! What twisted trail is this?" Then asked, "The Imperial Historian? And why would he have any interest in saving Felicin?" Truth answered, "Culp said it was the injustice, but you got it wrong. It wasn't Felicin that Duiker wanted to help. It was Heberick." In a low voice, quite unlike what she had heard from him moments earlier, Pella said, "If Duiker is going to be made out as some kind of traitor, well, lass, better think twice. This is Erin, after all, the city that watched. that saw Duiker delivering the refugees to safety. He was the last one through the gate, they say. The emotion writing his words was now raw as Pella continued, and Pormqual had him arrested. A chill rippled through Lostara. She said, I know. Blistig loosed us Redblades from the jails. We were on the wall by the time Pormqual had his army out there on the plain. If Duiker was seeking to free Heberic, a fellow scholar, well, I have no complaint with that. The trail we are on is Felissen's. Truth nodded at that. He said, Tavora has sent you, hasn't she? You and that claw inside, listening to Gesler and Stormy. Lostara briefly closed her eyes. She said, I am afraid I lack Pearl's subtlety. This mission was meant to be secret.
Do you think that she lacks the subtlety? Or are these guys just not dumb lunkheads, so they're able to infer what's going on based on the questioning?
I think she was rather straight to the point. Only a real knucklehead wouldn't see where this is going.
You rascal.
Maybe someone like the soldier maybe wouldn't pick up on it, but I think everybody else can kind of see what's going on here, especially since Pella knew what was going on with Felissen and them asking about a girl. She did not fit in. He knew she was from a royal house. So, like, it's pretty obvious what's going on here. Why you give me that look?
You are trying to get at me.
No, I mean, it's not like anybody knows about the Knucklehead story.
Might as well let the cat out of the bag.
Do you really want to? I don't want to.
You want to beclown me?
There's a little inside joke. Dane accidentally misspelled knucklehead one time, leaving the K out. And so it's just an ongoing thing. We like to just poke at it a little bit periodically. Yeah. So in the notes, I spelled knucklehead as all caps, knucklehead without a K at the front of it. Now, stepping into Lostara's shoes here for a second, this story is all convoluted. All of the people involved, it's crazy that convergence of the storylines of Culp and Duiker and then Felissen and Bodden, it's just so much intertwined with each other. It would sound really contrived if you're just hearing it like, what the heck are you talking about?
Yeah.
All these people are involved in the same story.
I have a comment about this a little bit later, but to hear about this from all kinds of different angles is really cool. I feel the same way as you. The convergence of all these different characters that we've heard about through the various books up to this point. Yeah, it's really fun.
Pella said, fine with me. And you, Truth? The tall lad nodded. He said, it doesn't really matter anyway. Felissen is dead. They all are. Heberic, Culp, they all died. Gesler was just telling that part. Lostara said, I see. Nonetheless, please say nothing to anyone else. We will be pursuing our task, if only to gather her bones. Their bones, that is. With a sigh, Truth said, that would be a good thing. Lostara made to leave, but Pella gestured to catch her attention. He held out to her the finger bone he had been drilling a hole through. He said, here, take this for yourself. Wear it in plain sight. Lostara asked why. Pella scowled and said, you've just asked a favor of us. Lostara accepted the grisly object as she said, very well. Pearl appeared in the doorway. He called to her. Lostara, are you done here? She said, I am. Pearl said, time to leave then. Lostara could see by his expression that he too had been told of Felissen's death, though probably in greater detail than the little that Truth had said. In silence, they retraced their route through the stables, out into the compound, then across to the gate. The door swung open as they arrived, and the soldier named Maybe waved them out. Lostara's attention was drawn to the bale of straw, which seemed to be wavering, strangely melting where it squatted, but Pearl simply waved her on. As they drew some distance from the estate, Pearl voiced a soft curse, then said, I need a healer. Observing him, Lostara said, your limp is barely noticeable. Pearl said, years of discipline, my dear. I'd much rather be screaming. The last time I suffered such strength used against me was with that Semk demon, that godling. The three of them, Gesler, Stormy, and Truth. There's more that's strange about them than just their skin. Lostara asked, any theories? Pearl replied, they went through a warren of fire, and somehow survived, though it seems that Felissen, Bodden, and Heberic didn't, though their actual fate remains unknown. Gesler simply assumes they died, but if something unusual happened to those coastal guards in that warren, then why not the same to the ones who were washed overboard? Lostara said, I am sorry, I was not told the details. Pearl said, we must pay a visit to a certain impounded ship. I will explain on the way. Oh, and next time don't offer to pay off someone else's debt until you find out how big it is.
I wonder how many stacks of Imperial coin it was.
A kingly sum, to be sure.
Yeah, it could have just been a couple if Pearl's upset about it.
Lostara thought, and next time, leave that pompous attitude at the stable doors. Then she said, very well. Pearl said, "And stop taking charge." Lestara glanced over at him and said, "You advised me to use my charm, Pearl. It's hardly my fault I possess more of that quality than you." Pearl said, "Really? Let me tell you, that corporal was lucky you stepped between us." Lestara wanted to laugh but pushed it back. She said, "You clearly did not notice the weapon under the man's bed." Pearl said, "Weapon? I care." Lestara cut in. "It was a two-handed flint sword, the weapon of a Talani mass, Pearl. It probably weighs as much as I do." He said no more until they reached the Salanda. Reminder, that's the sword that was given to Stormy on the Salanda by the Talani mass that allegedly went to seal the rent in the Warren. I say allegedly because it was noted that one of the Tai-Standee heads that were piled on the deck went missing. Second thing here, it sounds like Pearl isn't too happy with Lestara taking the lead, even though in that situation it was the best chance of success. And it seems like a character flaw on his part, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. He's obviously got a lot of hubris and doesn't like to be outshined by somebody else, even if it's exactly what the situation called for.
One other thing here, in case anyone forgot what he's talking about with that Semk demon when he's talking about the strength that he felt, that's that one shaman type character that had all his orifices sewn up because he had a piece of I don't want to call it a god, it was a piece of some type of ascendant inside of him, and they sewed up all the orifices to contain the power within his body. So he was kind of juiced up on this stuff that was inside of him, the spirit of whatever it was.
Yeah, he was pretty formidable, if I recall, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Mowing things down.
Duerker went on the raid with those Malazan Marines to take out this thing. And I think at the end of the day, what ended up taking it out was a cusser, if I'm not mistaken.
The killing blow apt killed the Semp demon, it looks like. Her single forelimb plunged deep into the demon's belly and pulled back.
Oh, and ripped it out.
In an explosion of spurting fluids. I had forgotten that she's the one who did it. Cool.
Yeah. The ship's berth was well guarded, yet clearly permission for Pearl and Lestara had been provided earlier, for the two were waved onto the old Drahman's battered deck, then left deliberately alone, the ship itself cleared of all others. Lestara scanned the area midships, flame-scarred and mud-smeared. A strange pyramidal mound surrounded the mainmast, draped in tarpaulin. New sails and sheets had been fitted, clearly taken from a variety of other vessels. Standing at her side, Pearl's gaze fell upon the covered mound, and he voiced a soft grunt and asked, "Do you recognize this ship?" Lestara replied, "I recognize it's a ship." Pearl said, "I see. Well, it's a Quan Drahman of the old pre-imperial style, but much of the wood and the fittings are from Driftavali. Do you know anything of Driftavali?" Lestara replied, "It's a mythical island off the Kwantali coast, a drifting island, peopled with demons and specters." Pearl said, "Not mythical, and it does indeed drift, though the pattern seems to describe a kind of wobbly circle. As for demons and specters, well," he strode to the tarpaulin, drew the covering back and continued, "hardly anything so frightening. Severed heads, neatly piled, all facing outward, eyes blinking and fixed on Pearl and Lestara, the glimmer of wet blood." Stepping back, Lestara croaked, "If you say so." Even Pearl seemed taken aback, as if what he had unveiled was not entirely what he had expected. After a long moment, he reached down and touched a fingertip to the pooled blood. He said, "Still warm." Lestara stuttered, But that's impossible." Pearl said, "Any more impossible than the damn thing still being conscious? Or alive at the very least?" He straightened and faced her, waved expansively, then went on. "This ship is a lodestone. There are layers upon layers of sorcery, soaked into the very wood, into the frame. It descends upon you with the weight of 1,000 cloaks." Lestara said, "It does? I don't feel it." Pearl looked at her blankly, then faced the mound of severed heads once more. He said, "Neither demons nor specters, as you can see. Tai-Standee, most of them. A few Quantalian sailors. Come, let us go and examine the captain's cabin. Magic tumbles from that room in waves." Lestara asked, "What kind of magic, Pearl?" Pearl had already begun walking towards the hatch. A dismissive gesture, then he said, "Kurald Galain, Talon, Kurald Emerlon, Rashan." He paused suddenly and swung round, then said, "Rashan, yet you feel nothing?" Lestara shrugged and said, "Are there more heads in there, Pearl? If so, I think I'd rather not." Pearl snapped, "Follow me."
First of all, I think that's interesting that Pearl's calling the Salanda a lodestone. That's such a good description of it because it really is kind of a hub of a lot of cool things that just keep going on throughout the story.
Yeah.
But I also have to say, I'm a little surprised and confused that Pearl can detect anything. Because back in chapter 3, we discussed a few things about the Salanda. And what I'm remembering is a moment when one of Karsa's 7 gods had sprinkled some otataral dust in the cabin. And then in the flashback with Culp and Hebrick, they were unable to detect any magic. Do you have anything?
I think it's a really good point. I remember something was said about the warren being held open by the dead mage, and the Odotaral dust was supposed to help it from becoming a problem, like just continuing to grow into some type of issue.
Okay.
Maybe it was only enough dust to suppress that, and then maybe it's not like it completely cancels it out. Maybe they didn't have enough to really counteract everything that was going on in there.
Okay. So maybe there could be another factor of, who was it? Was it Culp who asked Hebrick if he could detect anything, I believe?
Hebrick asked Culp, I think.
Was it Hebrick who asked Culp?
Yeah, Culp was the mage.
I can't recall who asked who, but when they could say nothing at all, I took that to mean actually devoid.
Oh, that's a great point. Yeah, that does kind of mismatch. Maybe there's levels of sensitivity too, though.
That's what I was wondering, if maybe it's just not quite as adept. And so that then surprises me that Pearl would possibly be more adept at detecting several types of it, and Culp or Hebrick was unable to detect anything.
I think Pearl, he might be a much stronger magic caster, because think of what he did to the entire Ragstopper when Kalam was on there.
Oh, yeah.
He had the whole boat in this mental twist of time manipulation, and nobody knew what was going on.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty serious, like a high mage type ability.
For a long period of time, right? They were Yeah.
And where Culp was admittedly not the strongest mage.
Uh-huh.
He was able to do a little bit of stuff here and there, but it feels like he was a level 3 character versus, like a level 20 character.
Okay.
In Dungeons and Dragons.
That makes more sense then in this situation. I can accept that.
Notice how Pearl is really paying attention to this Rashan piece, and how what Lestara is saying isn't tying back to what she said earlier with him saying it smells like magic in this room. And she just is papering over these cracks pretty swiftly, changing off the subject. But he's really observant and always thinking of like, this doesn't match what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty sharp guy.
Yeah.
For all his faults.
Definitely.
He seems pretty smart.
He's logging that stuff away because you're right. You can see the questions in his mind. Suspicion is rising.
Inside, Blackwood, the air thick as if rolling with memories of violence. A gray-skinned, barbaric-looking corpse pinned to the captain's chair by a massive spear. Other bodies sprawled here and there as if grabbed, broken, then tossed aside.
Interesting to me that this person is still speared. This boat has been traveling around, and it's just like, we're just going to leave this guy speared to the chair, to the wall. Like,
I think they're just terrified of touching anything.
I guess
on this
so.
thing.
Maybe that's enough, but crazy that they've just left the bodies there.
Yeah, in a world of superstition and curses, you could see how people would really buy into, I don't want to touch any of this.
Yeah.
This is all unholy, especially with the heads on the deck.
Oh, yeah.
Not touching any of it. A dull, sourceless glow permeated the low, cramped room, barring strange patches on the floor smeared with, Lestara saw, Odotaral dust. Pearl muttered, "Not Tystandee. These must be Tystadur. Oh, there are plenty of mysteries here. Gesler told me about the crew manning the oars down below, headless bodies. Those poor Tystandee on the deck. Now, I wonder who killed these Adur." Lestara asked, "How does all this lead us further onto Felissen's trail, Pearl?" Pearl replied, "She was here, wasn't she? Witness to all this. The captain here had a whistle strung around his neck, which was used to direct the rowers. It's disappeared, alas." Lestara said, "And without that whistle, this ship just sits here." Pearl nodded and said, "Too bad, isn't it? Imagine, a ship with a crew you never have to feed, that never needs rest, that never mutinies." Turning back to the doorway, Lestara said, "You can have it. I hate ships. Always have. And now I'm leaving this one." Pearl said, "I see no reason not to join you. We have a journey ahead of us, after all." Lestara asked, "We do? Where?" Pearl replied, "The Solanda traveled warrens between the place where it was found by Gesler and where it reappeared in this realm. From what I can gather, that journey crossed the mainland, from the North Odotaral Sea down to Aran Bay. If Felissen, Hebrick, and Bodden jumped off, they might well have reappeared on land somewhere on that route." Lestara said, "To find themselves in the midst of the rebellion." Pearl said, "Given what seems to have led up to it, they might well have considered that a far less horrendous option." Lestara said, "Until some band of raiders stumbled onto them."
Can you give me a quick reminder of how Felissen, Bodden, and Hebrick escaped the Solanda?
They jumped overboard when they were in the warren of fire following the escape from the Nascent.
Okay, they jumped off. I had forgotten that.
I believe so.
Yeah.
Somebody might have fallen off, but I think the others jumped off.
Okay.
I just realized we have all this circuitous stuff happening where we keep coming back to the Solanda. We have all these pieces falling into place where Felissen is getting connected to Pella, getting connected to Duiker, all this stuff happening. Then Lestara has been tasked with trying to find Felissen, and she was there when they killed the original Shaikh. she's the one that shot the crossbow that killed him. There's a potential scenario where she is coming full circle back to there, because if they do find where Felicin landed and somehow, however they get back to that spot, that's a full circle for her too.
That's cool.
Isn't that wild?
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy.
How do you write this? Like, how do you come up with a story like this where all these pieces tie back to each other?
Yeah. I have wondered this many times. How do you remember all this? We're only 4 books deep. How do you keep track of all of this stuff?
Yeah, they didn't have a lot of the same capabilities that we have today with being able to search as easily for the text and stuff like that. So I don't know.
That's, I mean, an incredible memory of this guy.
Oh, yeah.
Real quick, reminds me when I was a young boy, and the books that I was reading were the Mossflower and Redwall series by Brian Jakes. And he actually came to my elementary school one time.
What?
Yeah. So we got to meet him, and he talked about memory. Certain people, I'm sure they're just built a little bit different. And he was like, open the book up and pick something out, like chapter 19 of whatever book, and he would recite the first paragraph of that chapter. That blew my mind as a kid, that he was able to just remember. And maybe, I mean, I don't think it was a full bit, because he was asking people to just pick a chapter.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, read the first paragraph.
Some people have that memory where they can see the stuff and they can access it.
Yeah, what do they call that? Eidetic memory or something like that? Like, really cool. And maybe Erikson he's just got that talent. He's an adept.
I feel sorry for any man that marries a woman with a memory like that. Because you're cooked.
Yeah, you are.
Do you remember 6 years ago in 3 days when you said this?
It's happened to me before.
I remember.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me remind you of what you said. At 2:34 p.m., you said you were going to fix the dishwasher.
Exactly.
And it's still broken.
It's trouble for us, bro. Oh, God.
Captain Kenneb's 9th Company was called to muster in 3 successive assemblies on the parade ground. There had been no advance warning, simply the arrival of an officer commanding the soldiers to proceed at double time. Back to Pearl's point, there was no advance warning.
Yeah. Yeah. They didn't get that.
Squads 1, 2, and 3 went first. These were heavy infantry, 30 soldiers in all, loaded down in scale armor and chain van braces and gauntlets, kite shields, weighted longswords, stabbing spears strapped to their backs, visored and cheek-guarded helms with lobster tails, dirks and pig stickers at their belts. The Marines were next, Randall's 4th, 5th, and 6th squads. Following them were the bulk of the company's troops, medium infantry, the 7th to the 24th squads. Only slightly less armored than the heavy infantry, there was among them the addition of soldiers skilled in the use of the short bow, the long bow, and the spear. Each company was intended to work as a discrete unit, self-reliant and mutually supportive. As he stood in front of his squad, Strings studied the 9th, their first assembly as a separate force. They awaited the adjunct's arrival in mostly precise ranks, saying little, not one out of uniform or weaponless.
I love that required a special little note. Everyone has their armor and a weapon.
Yes, I'm sure there are a number of them that are known to misplace their weapon.
Yeah. Strings included, right?
Dusk was fast approaching, the air growing mercifully cool. Lieutenant Randall had been walking the length of the 3 squads of Marines for some time, back and forth, his steps slow, a sheen of sweat on his smooth-shaven cheeks. When he finally halted, it was directly before Strings. Randall hissed, "All right, Sergeant, it's your idea, isn't it?" Strings asked, "Sir?" Randall said, "Those damned finger bones! They showed up in your squad first, as if I wouldn't have noticed that. And now I've heard from the captain that is spreading through every legion. Graves are being robbed all over the city, and I'll tell you this." He stepped very close and continued in a rough whisper. "If the adjutant asks who is responsible for this last spit in her face over what happened yesterday, I won't hesitate in directing her to you." Strings replied, "Spit in her face? Lieutenant, you are a raging idiot. Now, a clump of officers have just appeared at the main gate. I suggest you take your place, sir." Face dark with fury, Randall wheeled and took position before the 3 squads. The adjutant led the way, her entourage trailing. Captain Kenneb awaited her. Strings remembered the man from the first disastrous mustering. A Malazan. The word was out that he had been garrisoned inland, had seen his share of fighting when their company had been overrun. Then the flight southward back to Erin. There was enough in that to lead Strings to wonder if the man hadn't taken the coward's route. Rather than dying with his soldiers, he'd been the first in the rout. That's how many officers outlive their squads, after all. Officers weren't worth much as far as the sergeant was concerned.
There's a little bit different take on Keneb compared to Gamut, isn't it? Am I remembering right that Gamut thought Keneb was a worthy officer?
Yes, but Gamut has met Keneb. Fiddler is making assumptions based on his past experiences.
Oh, okay, that's true. Yeah, all right.
Yeah, he probably hasn't had a lot of exposure to him yet.
Mm-hmm. Just seeing him, maybe, his own interactions with Rannall, and just kind of drawing that conclusion like that.
Yeah. The adjutant was speaking with the man now. Then the captain stepped back and saluted, inviting Tavora to approach the troops. But instead she drew a step closer to the man, reached out and touched something looped about Keneb's neck. String's eyes widened slightly. He thought, that's a damned finger bone. More words between the man and the woman, then the adjunct nodded and proceeded towards the squads. Alone, her steps slow, her face expressionless. String saw the flicker of recognition as she scanned the squads. Himself, then Cuddle. After a long moment, during which she entirely ignored the ramrod-straight Lieutenant Rannall, she finally turned to the man and said, Lieutenant. Lieutenant Rannall said, Adjunct. Tavora said, there seems to be a proliferation of non-standard accoutrements on your soldiers. More so here than among any of the other companies I have reviewed. Rannall said, yes, Adjunct, against my orders, and I know the man responsible. Tavora replied, no doubt, but I am not interested in that. I would suggest, however, that some uniformity be established for those trinkets, perhaps from the hip belt, opposite the scabbard. Furthermore, there have been complaints from Erin's citizenry. At the very least, the looted pits and tombs should be returned to their original state, as much as that is possible, of course. Randall's confusion was obvious. He said, of course, Adjunct. Dryly, the adjunct added, and you might note as well that you are alone in wearing a non-standard uniform of the 14th Army at this time. I suggest you correct that as soon as possible, Lieutenant. Now, you may dismiss your squads, and on your way out, convey my instruction to Captain Keneb that he can proceed with moving the company's medium infantry to the fore. Rannall saluted and stammered, yes, Adjunct, at once. Strings watched her walk back to the entourage and thought, oh, well done, lass.
Well done indeed. I love that she can see Rannall as the one who needs correction instead of the troops. I'd imagine this can go a long way to improving morale in the army.
Yes, this is a good sign from her. She knows enough to allow this symbolic show to take place.
Mm-hmm.
Gamut's chest was filled with aching as he studied the adjunct striding back to where he and the others waited. A fiercely welling emotion. Whoever had come up with the idea deserved, well, a damned kiss, as Cuddle would have said. Gamut thought, they've turned the omen, turned it. And he saw the rekindled fire in Tavora's eyes as she reached them. She said, fist Gamut. Gamut said, Adjunct? Tavora said, the 14th Army requires a standard. Gamut replied, aye, it does indeed. Tavora said, we might take our inspiration from the soldiers themselves. Gamut said, we might well do that, Adjunct. Tavora asked, you will see to it in time for our departure tomorrow? Gamut replied, I will. From the gate, a messenger arrived on horseback. He had been riding hard and drew up sharply upon seeing the adjunct. Gamut watched the man dismount and approach. He thought, gods, not bad news, not now. The adjunct demanded, report. The messenger gasped and said, 3 ships, Adjunct, just limped into the harbor. Tavora said, go on. The messenger said, volunteers, warriors, horses and war dogs. It's chaos at the docks. Gamut demanded, how many? The messenger said, 300, Fist. Gamut asked, where in Hood's name are they from? The messenger's gaze snapped away from them, over to where Nil and Nether stood. He met Tavora's gaze once more and said, Wiccans, Adjunct, Clan of the Crow, Coltane's own. And thus the chapter ends. And what an end to the chapter. Hell yeah, the army needs this, man.
Yeah. That's got to be a big morale boost. Not only is the adjunct siding with the soldiers for these little trinkets and stuff that they've got, but also getting reinforcements. That's got to be a big boost.
Get your fist pumped. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
For standout moments.
For me, the conversation between Lestariel and Cotillion was really good. Cotillion telling her that had Quick Ben taken her, she would have ended up a bridge burner. That would be a really cool, I don't know, alternate universe or something. But also setting her up for a quest as well. He's got a lot of moving parts for whatever it is that he's cooking up.
I like the additional details of what happened that night in Erlatan, where Dalat visited the temple where Lostara was dancing. That was pretty critical information, I think.
Yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, and then learning more about the shadow dance being an assassination technique, less than worship of the Rashan stuff. So I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. Also very clever of her that she didn't spill the beans regarding Bodden.
Would you say she danced away from the topic quite deftly?
She did. She did indeed. Oh, Lord. It also... It also sounds like Cotillion has some real admiration for how smart and crafty Quick Ben is.
Frustration / admiration. He is too clever by far.
Yeah.
You can't help but admire the guy.
What's funny that even Cotillion, as an ascendant, would say he's too powerful. Like, that was something he actually said. That's wild to think that, I guess he was a squad mage and they've elevated him to a high mage. But even still, you've got that much respect for the guy. Cool.
Yeah.
I also like the talk between Lestara, Pella, and Truth. It's almost like when Pella said he was waiting for somebody to find him, that maybe it was something weighing him down. Like he wanted someone to find him so he could get that off of his chest. And even if it's not that case, like we said before, it's still a great piece of dialogue to hear from a different point of view.
I guess he saw the writing on the wall. Someone important like that isn't just going to disappear. Eventually somebody's probably going to come looking for him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I enjoyed Gessler not warning Pearl about what would happen if he woke Stormy up.
Oh, yeah.
Stormy's subsequent display of strength is also really cool.
Yeah. We've talked about that several times, whether this going through the Warren and the skin and everything else, did it give them more strength, or was he already just like a big, strong guy and now it's just kind of elevated?
I think it's both.
Okay.
I think he was always big and strong, and then on top of that, he was elevated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Really good stuff.
Yeah. I also enjoyed the way the veterans, led by Fiddler, were able to turn the omen and own it. It's kind of like when someone tries to get under your skin and you just basically say, yeah, whatever. Instead of showing that it annoys you, you own it, that you take the power away from them.
Yep. I like that too. Really cool aspect to this.
I enjoyed Tavora being wise enough to know not to forbid the soldiers wearing these charms. And then even going so far as to reprimand Rannall for not following along. I like to see that from her.
Mm-hmm. I think it's a really important bit.
And then finally, the Crow clan showing up at the end of the chapter, ending the chapter on a high note right there, especially after the finger bone being accepted as a symbol.
Yeah. The Crow clan, Coltane's own. I mean, Nil and Nether have been really dour about this up to this point, and maybe seeing some people from the Crow clan will raise their spirits a little bit.
Hopefully.
Yeah. They might be too far gone, but
they're not really surrounded by many of their own as well right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it might be helped to have a little bit of home come around for them. Second to that, another reason they're doer is probably because they feel like they're spiritually burned out. They feel like they don't have their magic anymore. They said as much.
The well has dried up, so to speak.
Yeah. All right. Great job today, Dane.
Good job, Kamraun.
Thank you. You got any final thoughts before we drop off here?
I have a little something, I think. This is such a good chapter. There are a lot of things that are happening here that give us more information to flesh out some of the backstories, especially like Lestara's, and some of the moments that fill in a few gaps like Quick Ben and the Bridge Burners going after the cult of Rashan as well. And as well, Gessler, Stormy, Truth, Pella, all telling their versions of what happened with Felicin, Hebrick, and Bodden. The Marines turning the omen is also really important going forward. So even though no one's really going anywhere, there's still so much happening. And for me, this is a chapter that does what Erikson has talked about in some of his interviews, rewarding multiple read-throughs. Unless you're a more astute reader and you were able to pick up a lot of this stuff on the first time. But for me, going back the second time, being able to pick up some of these little details, really cool, really fun, really enjoy it.
Agree. The astute reader piece, if it's your first read through, you don't even know what to look for sometimes though. So that's part of the joy of the second read through is you can look forward to and say, okay, now I see what's happening here.
That's an excellent point. Not even knowing what it is that's important at this point.
It's looking both forward and backward.
Yeah.
When you're rereading it. It's great.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks everybody. We'll see you next week.
We'll see you next week.